Hey, sports fans. Welcome to the Skylander sports scene. My name is John Kuntz. I'm the athletic director at Sussex County Community College. And today I have with me our head baseball coach, Ramadan Mehmedi. Welcome to the show, Ram.
Thank you, John. Glad to be here.
I'm sure it's people probably thinking a little bit strange that we're going to be talking baseball because if you look out the window, most recently, it's cold weather, snow on the ground, and not too many people are thinking about the sport of baseball. They're probably thinking about football playoffs and the NFL and NBA basketball. But as you and I both know, the college baseball season is right around the corner, and it's going to be starting extremely shortly here. You'll be practicing everything. Before we get into that, tell us a little bit about your playing days, your coaching career, and what you've done coaching here at Sussex.
Well, I grew up in Sparta, and I played for under Coach Slobosian over there, played baseball. And then after that, I came here directly for 2 years to play under Todd Poltersdorf. I actually transitioned into a pitcher because I was a catcher in high school. But, to be blunt, I was not really good enough to be a starting catcher, so I kind of wanted my way to be on the team. So Todd allowed me to go a different avenue with pitching. And from there, I went to NJCU to be a closer for 2 years. And about a year after college, I came back here, started coaching for Todd as the pitching coach. And I was with him for 2 years until I took over to be the head coach here for baseball. And then this is probably I'm entering my 6th season as a head coach here. So altogether, it's probably been 11 years I've been at Sussex.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you made that transition from, a position player, or in your case, a catcher, to pitchers. You sometimes see that. I don't know if that's frequent. You see it occasionally. I guess in the minor leagues and professional leagues, Major League Baseball. Is it a common thing in college ball where a player may transition from a position player to pitcher? I know that they transition from one position to another, but
Yeah.
To go from first base or catcher or shortstop or center field to a pitcher, is that happen frequently?
Yeah. Well, for me, I basically saw the writing on the wall when I got here. I wasn't a bad player, but there's like Chad Reinerstein was here, Vinny Joyce from Wallkill, and James Sack from High Point. There was 3 really good catchers in front of me and vying for time. And for me, I was always a hardworking guy, and I would do anything to get on the field. But the transition was difficult for the first year because being a PO, pitcher only, it's really boring throughout the year because all you do is run and throw and basically mechanics, and it can get very tedious at times. But I also think me being a catcher helped me prolong my pitching just because I knew how to call a game. I knew what I wanted to do with hitters. Going to your question, seeing that transition a lot, it does happen a lot, especially for this area, because of how small Sussex County is, with schools and stuff like that. We try to bring kids as dual guys, where they're pitchers and position players, and then if one spot that they're at, we go and sit down and talk to them about what best fits for the team. And a perfect example was last year, Sean Whitwigger from High Point. He was a second baseman, and at that time we had like 5-6 second basemen, and he had a crazy arm throwing angle. And then we put him on the mound in Florida, and then he actually been one of our stoppers coming out of the pen for the remaining of the year. So things like that do transition actually quite a bit.
Yeah, I guess when you're a young player, you do what you got to do, to be a part of the team.
Exactly.
Sometimes, and you'll play a position that you're not used to, or you'll experiment, or you'll try something. And I would imagine that a lot of times when coaches are looking for pitchers, you're looking at those positions where you normally have your strong arms.
Yeah.
You know, the guy who makes the throw across the diamond from deep third base, or your shortstop making the throw from the hole,
or different arm angles.
Right,
That big
exactly,
arm, submarine kind of style.
yeah. I mean, it seemed to me kind of odd that you would convert a second baseman to the mound, but the fact that Sean had a weird arm angle, whether it's coming from underneath, on the side, wherever, is kind of unique. And you kind of look for those type of players too, to give the batter somebody different to look at. Like I said, you're going to be starting up practice pretty soon, in a couple of weeks. College baseball, 2-year colleges start practice in January. Obviously, the first few weeks, you're going to be inside, if not longer, because of the weather. What do you do? What do you do to keep it fresh? It's always, hitting and throwing and fielding ground balls on the gym floor. There's no bad hops. There's no wind in your eyes blowing in your face. What do you try to do in your practice sessions to keep things fresh?
Well, we start January 15th, first 2 weeks, changing it up a little bit this year, just because of, again, the dryness of practice, being inside and stuff like that, because of the weather. The big thing that we do, that I'm trying to do, is have pitchers and catchers start for the first 2 weeks, starting January 15th, just so I could give more time to the pitchers and give more time to the catchers for the fundamentals of what they need to do. So once the whole team does come together, I'm looking at 26, 27 this year for the roster size, and 26, 27 guys in our gym. It's a very minimal space that everyone could really focus on certain things. So what we try to do is separate everything, and then this year I'm going to incorporate our new weight room into our practices, just so we have a good flow going in and out. The big thing about trying to keep everything fresh, once February, mid-February, things start getting a little stale, we reach out to Newton High School to try to see if we could use their turf football field, and for the past 2 years they've allowed us to do that. And then we also use Sparta Athletic Club turf facility for ground balls and stuff like that. And then, like any other college in the Northeast, we use the parking lots at our college quite a bit. So, for us, it's just trying to keep the kids in it as long as possible. And, the big thing is, again, just try to get through those 2 months or a month and a half until we start up. Because, as I tell my assistant coaches, once we figure it out that practice is getting stale, the players already figured that out a week ago, because that's all they're focused on. So, for me, it's just trying to find different ways that we could practice, and find different venues and scenarios that we could use that will help us into the season.
Yeah, I know it's always kind of tough with baseball starting so early, basically in the winter months. For 2-year colleges, and by the time your season starts, it starts to wind down, by the end of April and early May.
Yeah, well, last year was the worst year I had because of the snow late, that big snowstorm late. We didn't get to practice on the field once. So, that's why I'm kind of happy this is happening now. So once the season comes, hopefully it's over.
Yeah, well, that's right. Hopefully this is all we're going to get, and the weather's going to warm up a little bit. You're listening to WRSK 97.5, your cruising oldies station in the Skylander sports scene. My guest today is Ramadan Mehmedi, the head baseball coach here at Sussex County Community College, and we're talking a little baseball, trying to warm you up out there. We're talking about practices and what you try and do to keep it fresh, and baseball is that type of game where there's so many situations can arise during the course of a game. How do you address that? What do you do to try to prepare your team for the types of situations that might arise during the course of a game?
That's the thing about baseball. There's certain situations that you think that you're so keen on that you practice every day, and then once it happens, it's like oh no moment when it happens on the field, and you're like, well, we spent this much time on practice with it. It's basically about a reaction thing. And then the big thing that I figured out for the past 2 years, because defensively we've been pretty good, and that was my focus leading up to last year, is that start making kids get comfortable with being uncomfortable in the fall. And the big part was the reason why we play a lot of games in the fall and stuff like that is just so they can get the game speed reps right away. So when that oh no moment happens in live play, they're ready for it. And as a coach, you would hope they would remember it from November, December, January up into February. But that's basically the best time that we have to show these kids what we want and what can happen. Like a pickle or a rundown, stuff like that. It seems simple that you could do in a gym, but once you start putting it on a diamond and then people are moving, and the big thing for us is JUCO. Each year we need freshmen to step up. It's a short window for playing, and so for that, the big thing for us is to get that game speed down, and the fall is a huge part of it. I understand we only do it part-time, but with the time that we do have for the fall, it is basically game-related stuff. So we'll practice one day, then we'll inter-squad, then we'll go out and play an opponent.
Yeah, let's talk more about that, because you do play a fall season, exhibition-type season to prepare your team for the spring. And we've done that, every year that you've been here, and previous coaches have done it here. Tell us a little bit more about, the practices, the goals of it. How many games do you actually play? Exhibition games do you play? Do you have umpires? Do you travel? When does it start? When does it end? Because I know it's an important facet of college baseball.
Yeah. When I was here as an assistant, we would play, and the majority of them would be inter-squads, the games down during fall ball. But when I took over, I started implementing more games. And I'm sure you noticed that with the times and stuff like that with vans. But the fall is you never know what the weather is up here. So we usually go from pitchers and catchers start the date that we're allowed, August 15th, and then when school opens, that's when the full team's there, and then we'll practice. That first week it'll just be 2 practices, and then we usually play like Middlesex on that Sunday away. And the big thing for me is I schedule a majority of the games away for the fall, just because, again, like I said, freshmen need to know the grind of baseball. We're leaving here on Sunday at 8 a.m. and we're not coming back until
8 p.m.
8 p.m. or maybe 10 p.m. Depending how far we go, like a Sullivan scenario. So for that, it's more of like to get fall, for me, is important to get them to understand what's ahead. And the reason why, I get, how can we play so many away games in the fall? Well, we only play about 16 to 18, but us thinking about that as college guys, that's a whole high school season, 16 to 18 games up here, and that's just our fall. In the spring, we play about 48 on average, pending weather. So the big thing for that is just to get their psyche ready, get the negative stuff out of their heads, and then really show them if this is what you want. If you want to play college baseball, because this is it. No matter, I understand, there's that big, well, it's Sussex County. No, it's not Sussex County. We play tough teams. It's a grind. It's not just a club team. And that's something that we got to get through their heads quickly. Especially with local kids, to understand that this is not a step down from where you want to go. It's actually a platform for you to go somewhere better. So that's the big thing about fall that I enjoy in playing a lot of games, because that I get to see everybody in game situations, and then we get those scenarios. If this kid has that moxie, that's the thing that you want to see, at least for baseball. I want to see that kid with that little bit of an attitude, and that grit. So fall for me is, again, it's very important, especially because like unlike other sports, we can't have a scrimmage leading up to our season.
Right.
Once our season starts in the spring, all games count. And for us to make playoffs, you have to either win 500 overall or 500 region.
Right.
So we got to get going.
Yeah. I mean, I can see how important the fall program is. I think some people may look at it just because the kids aren't in full uniform or whatever out on the field. They think, oh, they're just out there messing around. But it's really an important evaluation period for the coaches. And it's also a little check for the players themselves to say, all right, this is what it's like. You know, this is the type of pitching I'm going to be seeing. This is the speed of the game, you know, and how good some of the other players might be as far as talent and strength of arm. So I can see how that is such an important facet of the overall baseball program.
Yeah.
You know. All right. Let's talk a little bit about your team, your roster this year, and what it looks like. I know you have a number of players, a mix of players from local players, obviously, to international players, to players from out of state. So talk about some of your players and what your expectations are this year.
Yeah, you know, out of state, out of county, really hitting all 5 assets of the recruiting tool. Just because about 2 years ago I had to struggle with numbers where we had 15 guys. And then that's when I started deciding to go to the international route because I know our soccer teams do that and they have success with that on the field and academically. So for me, it was just trying to get, you know, as many numbers as I can for the fall where it's comfortable for me but also not overwhelming. Like, you know, I'm not looking to bring in 50 guys in the fall because it's just a strain on me and strain on my assistants. So we try to find about 35 good players that we want. And sometimes we find them, sometimes we don't. But the thing is that after that 15-man roster I had 2 years ago, this sophomore class that was a freshman class last year, that was the first real overall. I got my pick from, you know, I got kids from Colorado, you know, I got a kid from West Milford, you know, stuff like this, out of state. I got kids from Japan, kids from Venezuela. And so I started really building more rapport with scouting bureaus all across basically the country just to bring in these players that we need for that, you know, that doomsday effect of fall semester, of who passed, who didn't. And the big thing was to get somewhere where I'm going to be comfortable. Last year we had a tremendous freshman class. We lost 11 games by 1 run, you know, which really hurt us. But it also something that we get that experience back with them. You know, we get majority of those kids back. Plus, with the freshman group coming up now, they have more of a sophomore class that was in it, unlike last year's team. And the big thing for me is to get this team together as quick as possible. And not necessarily off the field, but more on the field. And again, I'm going to reiterate back to the fall season. There was a lot of good battles, a lot of good position battles. And that competition, I think, is something that we lacked the previous years. And therefore, you know, I felt like allowed us to excel a little bit, you know, in that short fall season. And then I get to see some kids, like we have a huge second base battle between a sophomore, Dalton, Del Rosso from Pacon, and battle between with Aldo Valarosi from Newton High School. He's a freshman. And they're both right now neck and neck. We did exit meetings. We still don't know who's going to be there the first game. So that kind of competition is actually like yes, as a coach you want to know who's there, but at this point we're good with either one of them. But the fact that they're pushing one another is actually makes us better as a team. And that continues all throughout our roster, I believe. And then our pitching staff, you know, led by, you know, Trevor Risden and from High Point, and Sean Kellman, who from West Milford. He started off not great last spring.
Right.
But I think his last 5 outings, he had about like a 2.2 ERA.
Wow, yeah, he came on.
Yeah, he was pretty strong for us down that stretch when we were trying to make that push for the playoffs.
Yeah.
So hopefully that carries over. He had a good fall. And then Cole Van Luvender, also from Newton. He was more of like a spot starter, long reliever, but logged about 36 innings last year. So we kind of anticipate him to help out. And then, I feel like our pitching staff is finally going to take that step that I wanted it to for the past couple of years.
Yeah.
Because our defense and our offense always been there. So I feel like this year our pitching is actually getting there, especially with 2 new guys we're getting internationally this spring. So it just helps us with our depth, and our relievers are pretty solid. So I'm pretty comfortable with our pen and our
big
arms.
part of the game, pitching.
Yeah.
As you know, as a coach, it's a big part of the game. You got to get people out, and you can never not have enough pitching.
No.
You never know what's going to happen during the course of the season. With injuries or a pitcher not meeting expectations or what have you. But pitching is certainly a big part of it.
Yep.
What about behind the plate? Who's battling behind the plate in the catching position?
I think our most talent is behind the plate. Returning is Tyler Goff. He caught about 36 of our 40 games last year.
Right.
Batted around 360.
He's a Colorado
Colorado kid from Chatfield High School, and he's returning, and he's probably one of our more better eyes at the plate. He doesn't swing at garbage and stuff in the dirt. He really works the count. I almost feel like he's a Tony Gwynn kind of deal. He can pull the ball if he wants to, but he's looking to spread it around, which only helps him for his baseball IQ. And then, we have 5 catchers, and I could tell you all 5 of them could hit. And then the next one that's battling, basically the battle would be with Nicholas Dory. He's from Canada. He's a freshman. Okay. But he can also play the outfield, and he's also a left-hand bat. He's almost like a Tyler, just a little more smaller build. And he's just a get-it-over kind of guy. I can see him in the 2-hole for us, but he can also hit, or the 7-hole, which basically in college, the 7 holes where you get majority of your RBIs. And then the guy, other kid is Jan Lagreca from Venezuela. He's about like 6'4", 6'5", about 190, 195. He has basically, out of all the catchers, he probably has every single tool that you want. He's just 17 years old. He's just got to grow up a little bit, and he probably, I can see at the end of his 2 years, be probably one of the best players I've had. So he's got that, and then Nick Orfone from Vernon High School. He's good good lefty bat. He's got some pop, and then Chris Miller, who's a returner from last year. He's got some pop in his bat too. So our catchers, I guess I'm excited to bring in catchers, just because I feel like they know the game a lot better than the majority of guys.
Yeah, they do.
So in the fall, I kind of put them at different places, like Jan at first, Dory in the outfield, even Tyler in the outfield at sometimes, and Grafone in the outfield. So
you can experiment a little bit,
yes.
See what they can do out there.
Yeah.
Because those utility type players, become so valuable to you.
Yes.
They can play multiple positions, and if you can have a catcher, maybe he's not starting, but he's a backup,
yeah.
At the catching position, but can also play first base or, help you out in the outfield, it gives you a lot more options.
Yeah, and then like I'm sure you heard it, in the days you were playing, if you get hit, we're gonna find a place for you.
Yeah.
So basically, that's what fall is. Because I could see all our catchers in the lineup at one time.
Yeah.
And that's something that I really enjoy. And I'm not saying those are just our best catchers, but
right.
there's a lot more toys that we could play with than last year. Because last year we also had a lot of injuries. So it was, it's very. I'm very excited about that core.
It's exciting. I'm excited for you.
Yeah.
The guys that you're mentioning and seeing your roster size right now. I just know that everybody's anxious, because you can evaluate them in the fall, and you can look at them in the gym, and see how they're throwing the ball and how they're hitting in the cage. But you really don't know until you dress them up and put all the uniforms on and put the umpires out there and start playing against competition where it's for real now.
Yeah.
And the games count, towards qualification for the region tournament or conference play and that. But, well, let's talk a little bit about your schedule. Before we move on to that, this is WRSK 97.5, your cruising oldie station. My guest today is Ramadan Mehmedi, the head baseball coach at Sussex County Community College, and we're going to warm you up as we're talking baseball here in January. You start your season out early. You schedule the game earlier than we've ever had before in the past, I noticed. You have a February 24th date against Borough of Manhattan in New York City, hoping that it'll be warm enough to be able to play.
Fingers crossed.
I know colleges do that a lot of times, try and schedule some early games like that just in case.
Yep.
We can get a few games in. More than likely, though, we're looking at heading to Maryland and the Community College of Baltimore County in Catonsville, Maryland, the first weekend of March, which has kind of been a tradition now over the last few years. We head down to Maryland and compete, right, Coach?
For the past 3 years, yep. We've been going to Catonsville. Haven't really been successful down there, 'cause usually that's our first time on a field. That's why I kind of put that Borough of Manhattan game in there, just because that's the coach I met down when I was working for Perfect Game in the summer. But Catonsville they're a good team, no doubt about it, and it's a good test right off the bat. So for me, scheduling Catonsville really shows me what I have. And last year was, we had 2 really tough games where we lost in the last inning, by 1 run, which was a theme last year. So for me, it's a good test because they're always in that district championship with when they're playing Mercer, stuff like that, and they got a good region down there as well with Herkimer and Fredericks. So just playing them, hopefully it's a little bit warmer by a little bit, 5 degrees, but it just shows our kids that, because they got some serious dudes over there, and they're coming back from a Florida trip, so when they play us, so they're already about 7 games deep.
They have some games under their belt.
So that's usually, it's a good test for me to see where we're at or what we need to work on, basically.
Plus, that's a good trip, for the players, overnight.
First overnight,
which we do, you stay for a couple nights, you play 4 games down there, hopefully the weather will be good, a couple double headers.
Yeah.
Then you come back home, you got try and get a couple more games in, weather permitting, but then it's off to Florida.
Yep.
In mid-March, and you play about 10 games down in Florida.
10 games, 10 games in about 6 days. We're down there for 8, but I don't count when we fly there and when we fly out. So total 8 days, but we schedule 10 games in 6 days, where the middle day, the 4th day is our off day, just to relax, just because of not so much give them, they could go out with their parents and stuff like that for the off day, but really it's just a rest day.
Yeah, it's Florida. The weather's warm, something to do on a particular day other than baseball, so it's kind of fun. And
then plus coming from 30-degree weather and then playing a doubleheader, we play 4 games, our first 2 games there. Right. So it's very taxing on their body, and every year there's cramping issues. So I remember my center fielder Justin Smith, after the first 2 games of Florida, one was even in the nighttime last year, he couldn't move because he was just cramped so badly. So he spent majority of the night in an ice bath. So Florida it's good, just like Catonsville, where you talked about that 1 night or 2 nights overstay where they bond. That's where Florida really comes in. And then previous 2 years, we actually had pretty tough Florida schedules, and we come out of there 5-5, which is not bad. But then this year we have a pretty tough Florida schedule.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw Niagara Community College of Rhode Island, Rainy River from Minnesota.
Yep.
The team from Canada.
Yeah.
So you do play some tough competition, and I know it's always a good trip, and I know that the players look forward to it.
Yep.
But you also, I guess, as a coach a little bit, and we got to remind the players to kind of temper it a little bit, because they finally get some warm weather, nice weather, get out on the field, and they're trying really hard, and they're exerting all this stuff, and that's when, muscle pulls happen,
Yep.
sore arms happen. They're trying to impress, to win a position or
Yep.
to keep a position. So they got to make sure that they don't overdo it. And then once you get back from Florida, I mean, you're pretty much jumping right back, in the league play. Mercer County Community College, one of the top 2-year college baseball programs in the country, went to
Yeah.
the World Series last year, to the final game. Deltec Owens, Lackawanna, Orange County, you're going to play up there. Rowan College at Burlington. You got Orange County again, third week of April for your military game.
Yep.
Where we honor the military veterans, and then of course right now end your regular season against your rival County College of Mars. So pretty packed schedule, and a lot of stiff competition there.
Yeah, our region is pretty tough. Just going off the basis of teams that we play that are ranked in Florida, and then we beat them in Florida. Our conference is, minus Mercer on its own, with like 5 studs out of the arm. But we only played twice. A lot of other region teams, they play like a 3-game set, 4-game set. So where you're going to see they're not so top guys. But when we play our region teams, it's only 2 games, so you're going to see they're number 1 every time.
Right.
And that's where it's difficult to dictate a win, for a region game, just because our best guy against their best guy, and then whoever's day is off, it just doesn't turn out well.
Yeah.
So for our region play, that's why I think Florida's so big, because when we come back, we're in region play, and then if we don't do well in Florida, we're behind the 8 ball with that overall record. So then we have to start focusing more on region play,
Right.
and that's the last thing I want to do, because for the past 5 years I've been here, the last weekend of our season with region play, we needed to win 1 game or 2 games, and it never happened. And we've always been at the door, but I'm trying to look for, trying to get past that,
Yeah. Well, Coach, I mean, we ran out of time. I had a lot more to talk about, but I think what we're going to do is, we'll have you back again.
Yeah.
You'll start up your season, in March and that, and through April. So we'll have you back on the show again. But I appreciate your time, and thank you for coming on.
Oh, no problem. It was a blast.
You've been listening to the Skylander Sports Scene on WRSK 97.5, your cruising oldie station. See you next time.